As a candidate for Chris County Chief Magistrate, I offer these characteristics to you, and I ask for your vote and your support. We're living in a crucial time. Many things have changed, but my commitment to serve the citizens of Chris County has never wavered. Whether you vote by mail-in ballot, early vote, or go to the polls on Tuesday, November 3rd, I'm Isaac Owens, and I ask for your vote and your support.
The J.W. Williams Funeral Directors have been proudly serving the people of this community since 1918. Service is our motto. The poor, the rich, the middle class, and all are given the best of care and attention at all times. You have the privilege to select what you want. In your time of need, contact the capable, the competent, and the dependable staff of the J.W. Williams Funeral Home who is genuinely concerned with your care. At J.W. Williams Funeral Home, you are aptly served by the proprietor, president, Deacon Arthur L. Parker, who continues the traditions and values set forth by the past president, Dr. Napoleon Williams. Your announcements for the J.W. Williams Funeral Home Sunday morning program are Deacon Arthur L. Parker, Reverend Isaac H. Owens, Mrs. Calandra Wilkerson Parker, Minister Frankie Harmon, Ms. Sandra Johnson, and Deacon Earl Clark, Jr.
Thank you, and good morning, friends. We come to you this morning to bring announcements, dedications, and songs. We certainly hope that your day may be brighter after viewing our program. The family of Mr. Robert, Georgia. The family of Mr. Robert Lewis McCormick of Cordial, Georgia. The family of Mother Mary Louise Williams of Cordial, Georgia. The family of Mother Lula Mae Williams Smith Felton of Cordial, Georgia. The family of Mr. Roderick Sorrell Roberts of Cordial, Georgia. The family of missionary Carolyn Burnett Lofton of Cordial, Georgia. The family of little Gianna Denise Harris of Fort Valley, Georgia, would like to thank their many friends for the food, the flowers, the condolences, and all other expressions of sympathy and kindness shown to them during their hours of sorrow and bereavement during the past week. Deacon Robert Curtis Henderson Sr., better known as RC, age 74, of 424 Georgia Highway 33 South, Cordial, Georgia, died Wednesday, September 16th at the Crisp Regional Hospital in Cordial, Georgia. The graveside funeral service for Deacon Robert Curtis Henderson Sr. was held Monday, September 21st at the Sunnyside Cemetery in Cordial, Georgia. Dr. K. M. Williams, pastor of the Greater Mars Tabernacle Baptist Church, officiated. Survivors include his loving and devoted wife of 54 years, Mrs. Mary Ruth Henderson of Cordial, Georgia, his loving and caring children, Mrs. Angela Henderson and her husband, Mrs. Angela Henderson Redding and her husband, Mr. Ricky Redding of Hampton, Georgia, Mr. Robert Henderson Jr. and his wife, Mrs. Sheila Henderson of Cordial, Georgia, Mr. Kelton Henderson and his wife, Mrs. Sholatonia Henderson of Kathleen, Georgia, Mr. Andrew Henderson of Covington, Georgia, and his wife, Mrs. Stephanie Henderson, Mr. Thomas Henderson of Cordial, Georgia, his grandchildren, DeMarcus and his wife, Jocelyn, Alexandria, Camelia, Markayla, Talijah, Keltavian, Micaiah, Marlacia, Kelton Jr., DeQuante, Tiana, Jacob, Jada, Josiah, Journey, Rostavius and his wife Ebony, Ricky Jr. and his wife Julia, 9 great-grandchildren, Deshawn, Demaria, Harmony, James, Christian, Felicia, Alexia, Alea, and Zariah. His caring siblings, Mr. Joe C. Henderson, Mr. Norman Henderson and his wife, Eloise, and Mrs. Leela Rogers and her husband, Mr. Cecil Rogers, all of Cordial, Georgia. Mr. Benny L. Henderson and his wife, Mrs. Joanne Henderson of Columbus, Georgia, and Mr. Larry Henderson and his wife, Mrs. Donna Henderson of El Paso, Texas. His sisters-in-law, Mrs. Betty Peterson of Hampton, Georgia, Ms. Shirley Faye Green, and Ms. Linda Gale Green, both of Cordial, Georgia. His brothers-in-law, Mr. Anthony Green and his wife, Mrs. Carolyn Green of Tennessee, Mr. Kermit Green and his wife, Mrs. Lydia Green, Mr. Benjamin Green, and Mr. Ricky Anderson, all of Cordial, Georgia. A host of other brothers and sisters-in-law, a host of nieces and nephews, many cousins, other relatives, and many sorry friends survive. Deacon Robert Curtis Henderson Sr., better known as RC, age 74, of 424 Highway 33 South, Cordial, Georgia. Mr. Robert Louis McCormick, age 74, of 1318 East 8th Avenue, Cordial, Georgia, died Thursday, September 17th at the Crisp Regional Hospital in Cordial, Georgia. The graveside funeral service for Mr. Robert Louis McCormick was held Tuesday, September 22nd at the Bethel Cemetery in Cordial, Georgia. Reverend Isaac H. Owens, pastor of the Mount Calvary Baptist Church, officiated. Survivors include his beloved and caring son, Mr. Robert Williams, and his wife, Mrs. Janetta Williams of Summerville, South Carolina, his beloved grandchildren, Ms. Shana Williams, Mr. Dantes Williams, Mr. Terrell Williams, Mr. Jaquan Williams, Ms. Tiana Williams, Ms. Tiandra Williams, Mr. Savion Williams, all of Summerville, South Carolina. One great-grandchild, a caring brother, former commissioner, Mr. A.J. Rivers, and his wife, Mrs. Vera Rivers of Cordial, Georgia. His caring nieces and nephews, Mrs. Glenda Rivers of Byron, Georgia, Ms. Fane Rivers Dove, and her husband, Mr. Selton Dove of East Orange, New Jersey, Ms. Gwendolyn Thrower of Cincinnati, Ohio, Mr. Gregory Rivers and his wife, Joanne of Warner Robins, Georgia, Mr. Alfonso Rivers and Mrs. Diane Hogans and her husband, Mr. James Hogans, all of Vero Beach, Florida, and Ms. Paula Sadler of Orlando, Florida. A host of other relatives and many sorry friends survived. Mr. Robert Louis McCormick, age 74, of 1318 East 8th Avenue, Cordial, Georgia. Mother Mary Louise Williams, age 87, of 306 East 23rd Avenue, Cordial, Georgia, died Tuesday, September 15th at the Crisp Regional Hospital in Cordial, Georgia. The private graveside funeral service for Mother Mary Louise Williams was held Wednesday, September 23rd at the Mount Olive Church Cemetery in Warwick, Georgia. Reverend Joseph Atkins officiated. The eulogy was delivered by Reverend Willie G. Grover. Survivors include 5 loving and devoted daughters, Ms. Linda Hill of Colleen, Texas, Mrs. Catherine Buford, Mrs. Betty Dawson, and Mrs. Estella Williams, all of Cordial, Georgia, and Mrs. Mary Dunham of Albany, Georgia. 5 loving and devoted sons, Deacon Lindbergh Williams and his wife, Mrs. Lelaine Williams of Atlanta, Georgia, Mr. Eugene Williams and his wife, Mrs. Deborah Williams, Minister James Williams, Deacon Darren Williams and his wife, Mrs. Lakeisha Williams, all of Cordial, Georgia, and Mr. Timothy Williams and his wife, Yvette of Columbus, Georgia. 30 grandchildren, 53 great-grandchildren, 5 great-great-grandchildren, a beloved brother, Mr. Ulysses Williams of Albany, Georgia, her loving sisters, Ms. Bernice Williams of Cordial, Georgia, and Mrs. Frances Waters of Warwick, Georgia. Her sisters-in-law, Mrs. Lois Wedges and Mrs. Frances Waters of Warwick, Georgia, Mrs. Lois Wedges and Mrs. Annie Ray and her husband, Reverend Lorinda Ray of Cordial, Georgia, Ms. Thelma Jean Williams of Americus, Georgia, Missionary Ernestine Rogers of Tifton, Georgia, and Mrs. Bessie Cumming of Homerville, Georgia. Her brothers-in-law, Mr. Charlie Ford and his wife, Mrs. Gloria Ford of Cordele, Georgia, Mr. Willie D. Williams and Mr. Monroe Williams, both of Ashburn, Georgia. A host of nieces and nephews, many cousins, other relatives, and many, many sorrowing friends and her Mount Olive Baptist Church family survived Mother Mary Louise Williams, age 87, of 306 East 23rd Avenue, Cordele, Georgia. Mother Lula Mae Smith Williams Felton, age 87, of 424 North 5th Street, Vienna, Georgia, died Saturday, September 19th at her residence. The graveside funeral service for Mother Lula Mae Smith Williams Felton was held Friday, September 25th at the Sunnyside Cemetery in Cordele, Georgia. Reverend Donnie R. Hall Sr., pastor of the Mount Olive Baptist Church, officiated. Survivors include her loving and devoted children, Mr. Tommy Smith and his wife, Mrs. Patricia Smith, Mrs. Mary Ellen Smith, Mrs. Carolyn Smith Ojeda, Mrs. Gloria Jean Pollock, Ms. Joanne Pollock Williams and her husband, Minister Robbie Williams, Mrs. Fannie Mae Pollock Polk and her husband, Mr. Robert Polk, Minister Annette Felton Clark and her husband, Elder J.C. Clark, Mr. David S. Felton, Mr. George S. Felton and his wife, Mrs. Elizabeth Annette Felton, Ms. Jennifer Felton Daniels and her fiance, Mr. Cornelius Lewis, and Elder Linton Felton and his wife, Mrs. Brianne Felton. 36 grandchildren, 62 great-grandchildren, and 7 great-great-grandchildren. A host of other relatives and many sorry friends survived Mother Lula Mae Smith Williams Felton, age 87, of 424 North 5th Street, Cordele, Georgia. Mr. Roderick Terrell Roberts, age 48, of 503 West 23rd Street, Cordele, Georgia, died Thursday, September 17 at Navison Health in Macon, Georgia. The graveside funeral service for Mr. Roderick Terrell Roberts was held Saturday, September 26 at the Pleasant Valley Church Cemetery in Pinehurst, Georgia. Reverend Isaac H. Owens, pastor of the Mount Calvary Baptist Church, officiated. Survivors include his loving and devoted mother, Ms. Patricia Ann Stiles of Cordele, Georgia, a loving daughter, Ms. Sharice Lowe of Pelham, Georgia, 5 beloved grandchildren, Tonay, Lee Allen, LaQuinta, Rashad, and Holly. His companion, Ms. Kenyon K. Dixon, and her daughter, Journey. His loving sisters, Mrs. Sabrina Smith and her husband, Mr. Larry Smith, Mrs. Valerie Relaford and her companion, Mr. Greg Gaston, and Ms. Valeria Relaford, all of Cordele, Georgia, and Ms. Audrey McCrae of Tifton, Georgia. His beloved brothers, Mr. Dennis Woodson and Mr. Carl Woodson, both of Cordele, Georgia, Mr. DeMarcus Talbert and his wife, Mrs. Jessica Talbert of Macon, Georgia, and Mr. Rico Roberts and his wife, Mrs. Jessica Roberts of Laurel, Delaware. His beloved aunts and uncles, Mrs. Johnny Campbell, Mrs. Helen Ford and her husband, Mr. Eugene Ford, Mrs. Brenda Oliver and her husband, Mr. Sam Oliver, Ms. Bernice Pittman and her husband, Mr. Freddie Pittman, and Mr. Ernest Trice, all of Cordele, Georgia. Mrs. Shirley Outlaw and her husband, Mr. Alonzo Outlaw of Decatur, Georgia, and Mr. Bobby Gaston of Tampa, Florida. His great aunts and great uncles, Mrs. Shirley Jackson of Cordele, Georgia, Mrs. Linda Porter, Mrs. Thelma Hall, and Mr. Jimmy Simmons, all of Atlanta, Georgia. A host of cousins, other relatives, and many sorry friends survived Mr. Roderick Terrell Roberts, age 48, of 503 West 23rd Avenue, Cordele, Georgia. Missionary Carolyn Burnett Lofton, age 65, of 506 East 17th Avenue, Cordele, Georgia, died Friday, September 18th at the Piedmont Hospital in Atlanta, Georgia. The graveside funeral service for missionary Carolyn Burnett Lofton was held Saturday, September 26th at the Little Rock Church Cemetery in Araby, Georgia. Minister Stephen Glover officiated. The eulogy was delivered by Elder H. Wilson. Survivors include her loving and devoted children, Mr. Kareem Butler, Sr., and his wife, Mrs. Anna Butler, Ms. Shakira Butler, Ms. Shanika Butler, all of Cordele, Georgia, and Ms. Kieria Lofton of San Diego, California. Her loving grandchildren, Shanteria, Jakayla, Kareem Jr., Zacchaeus, and Khalil. Her loving and devoted mother, Pastor Ola Lofton of Araby, Georgia. Her loving sisters, Mrs. Jerry Lofton Miller of Waycross, Georgia. Tax Commissioner Mrs. Deborah Lofton and Ms. Dorothy Lofton, both of Cordele, Georgia. Her beloved brothers, Mr. Charlie Lofton Jr. of Araby, Georgia, Mr. Wayne Lofton, his wife, Mrs. Cora Lofton, and Mr. Joe Lawton, both of Cordele, Georgia. Mr. Herbert Lofton and Mr. Michael Lofton, both of Araby, Georgia. Her aunts, Mrs. Ella Mae Williams of Tampa, Florida, Mrs. Mildred May of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, Mother Adeline Lofton, and Ms. Leola Lofton, both of Araby, Georgia. A great aunt, Mother Mattie Pearl Daniels of Araby, Georgia. A host of nieces and nephews, many cousins, other relatives, and many, many sorry friends survive. Missionary Carolyn Burnett Lofton, age 65, of 506 East 17th Avenue, Cordele, Georgia. Little Gianna Denise Harris, age 6 months, of 1103 East Church Street, Fort Valley, Georgia, died Wednesday, September 16th at the Peach County Hospital in Fort Valley, Georgia. The graveside funeral service for little Gianna Denise Harris was held Saturday, September 26th at the Vienna City Cemetery in Vienna, Georgia. Reverend Dr. Bobby G. West, pastor of the Bethel Baptist Church, officiated. Survivors include her loving mother, Ms. Christine Williams, and her beloved father, Mr. Gerald Harris, Jr., both of Fort Valley, Georgia. Her loving grandparents, Mrs. Carolyn Webb Harris of Fort Valley, Georgia, Mr. Edward James Thorpe and his wife, Mrs. Willie Pearl Thorpe of Vienna, Georgia, and Ms. Sandra Cunningham of Ashburn, Georgia. Her great-grandparents, Mrs. Phyllis Cunningham of Ashburn, Georgia, Mr. Edward James Thorpe, Jr. of Tifton, Georgia, and Ms. Ernestine Harris of Fort Valley, Georgia. Her godmothers, Ms. Amy Bridges of Macon, Georgia, Ms. Lisa Lachey Lawyer, and Ms. Renika Harris, both of Fort Valley, Georgia. Her godfathers, Mr. Dentavius Harris, Mr. Jalen Towns, and Mr. Quintarius Harris, all of Fort Valley, Georgia. Our beloved godbrother, Master Neven Van of Fort Valley, Georgia. 32 aunts and uncles, to include a devoted aunt, Ms. Rose Riggins of Cordele, Georgia. A host of other relatives survived. Little Gianna Denise Harris, aged 6 months, of 1103 East Church Street, Fort Valley, Georgia. Again, the family of Deacon Robert Curtis Henderson Sr. of Cordele, Georgia, the family of Mr. Robert Lewis McCormick of Cordele, Georgia, the family of Mother Mary Louise Williams of Cordele, Georgia, the family of Mother Lula Mae Williams Smith Felton of Cordele, Georgia, the family of Mr. Roderick Terrell Roberts of Cordele, Georgia, the family of missionary Carolyn Burnett Lofton of Cordele, Georgia, the family of little Gianna Denise Harris of Fort Valley, Georgia, would like to thank all of their many friends for all of the many kindnesses shown to them during their hours of sorrow and bereavement during the past week. May God bless each of you is their prayer. The J.W. Williams Funeral Directors of Cordele and Vienna were in charge of each of these arrangements during the past week. And now, it is certainly with the deepest regret that we make the following announcements. Ms. Catherine Johnson Cross, age 76, of 1027 West Side Drive, Americus, Georgia, died Saturday, September 19th at her residence. Survivors include her loving and devoted daughters, Mrs. Bertha Cross Banks and her husband, Mr. Jesse Banks, of Riverdale, Georgia. Ms. Elizabeth Burtz and Ms. Tracy Ellis, both of Americus, Georgia, and Mrs. Priscilla Streeter and her husband, Mr. Travis Streeter, of Houston, Texas. A devoted son, Mr. Terrence Johnson, and his wife, Mrs. Erica Johnson, of Albany, Georgia. 14 grandchildren, 28 great-grandchildren, her loving sisters, Mrs. Clara Laster of Browns Mill, New Jersey, Miss Susie Johnson of Americus, Georgia, and Miss Jewel Wise of Atlanta, Georgia. Her caring brothers, Mr. Albert Laster of Charlotte, North Carolina, Mr. Ralph Morgan and his wife, Mrs. Jardine Morgan, and Mr. Joe Johnson, both of Americus, Georgia, and Mr. Pete Mahone of South Carolina. A host of nieces and nephews, many cousins, other relatives, and many sorry friends, to include a longtime devoted friend, Mr. Christopher Sales of Columbus, Georgia, survived Mrs. Catherine Johnson Cross, age 76, of 1027 West Side Drive, Americus, Georgia. The graveside funeral service for Mrs. Catherine Johnson Cross will be held today, Sunday, September 27th at 12 o'clock noon at the Eastview Cemetery in Americus, Georgia. Her pastor, Reverend Jermaine Harris, pastor of the Allen Chapel AME Church, will officiate. Mr. Otis Hardy, age 65, of 509 North Jackson Street, Albany, Georgia, died Sunday, September 20th at his residence. Survivors include his beloved and caring son, Mr. Castonia M. Jones of Cordele, Georgia, two beloved grandchildren, Charveris and Zion, his loving sisters, Mrs. Ruby Snipes and her husband, Mr. Henry Snipes, Jr., and Ms. Laverne Anderson, both of Vienna, Georgia. A beloved brother, Mr. Raymond Hardy of Savannah, Georgia. A host of nieces and nephews, many cousins, other relatives, and many sorrowing friends survived Mr. Otis Hardy, age 65, of 509 North Jefferson Street, Albany, Georgia. The graveside funeral service for Mr. Otis Hardy will be held today, Sunday, September 27th at 4 o'clock p.m. at the Vienna City Cemetery in Vienna, Georgia. Brother James Wise of the Kingdom Hall of Jehovah's Witnesses will officiate. Mr. Ulysses Fullwood, Jr., age 64, of 111 Rebecca Court, Cordele, Georgia, died Monday, September 21st at the Crisp Regional Hospital in Cordele, Georgia. Survivors include his beloved wife, Mrs. Willie Mae Fullwood of Cordele, Georgia, his loving and devoted daughter, Miss Andrea Fullwood of Warner Robins, Georgia, his beloved grandchildren, Marquarius, Notoria, Dunkevian, and Orion. 6 great-grandchildren, his loving and devoted mother, Mother Ethel Mae Everett Fullwood of Cordele, Georgia. His loving sisters, Mrs. Crystal Bryant, Miss Fonda Fullwood, Miss Meredith Fullwood, and Miss Erica McKenzie, all of Cordele, Georgia. His beloved brothers, Mr. Joel Fullwood of Cordele, Georgia, and Mr. Stacy Fullwood and his wife, Mrs. Brenda Fullwood of Macon, Georgia. Sister-in-law, Mrs. Vivian Fullwood of Cordele, Georgia. His loving aunts, Missionary Clemmy Jones of Tampa, Florida, Miss Dorothy Fullwood and Miss Retha Fullwood, both of Atlanta, Georgia. Ms. Mary Hall of Cleveland, Ohio, and Ms. Eddie Mae Cooks of Cordele, Georgia. A host of nieces and nephews to include Miss Sabrina Smith and her husband, Mr. Larry Smith of Cordele, Georgia. A host of other relatives and many sorrowing friends survived Mr. Ulysses Fullwood Jr., age 64, of 111 Rebecca Court, Cordele, Georgia. The graveside funeral service for Mr. Ulysses Fullwood Jr. will be held Monday, September 28th at 11 o'clock a.m. at the Westview Cemetery in Cordele, Georgia. Elder Darrell Leggett, pastor of the Cordele Church of God in Christ, will officiate. The walk-up public visitation will be held today from 1 until 5 p.m. at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home. United States Army veteran Mr. Charlie Smith Sr., age 73, of 712 West 22nd Avenue, Cordele, Georgia, died Tuesday, September 1st at the Regency Hospital in Macon, Georgia. Survivors include his beloved and caring children, Mr. Gerald Smith of Daytona Beach, Florida, Miss Tangela Young of DeLand, Florida, Mr. Charlie Smith Jr. of Daytona Beach, Florida, Miss Alexis Smith of Jacksonville, Florida, and Miss Sonia Smith. 10 grandchildren, a host of great-grandchildren, his beloved uncles, Mr. Johnny C. Daniels and Mr. Marion Smith, both of Cordele, Georgia, a host of cousins, other relatives, and many sorrowing friends survive. United States Army veteran Mr. Charlie Smith Sr., age 73, of 712 West 22nd Avenue, Cordele, Georgia. The funeral service for United States Army veteran Mr. Charlie Smith Sr. will be held Thursday, October 8th at 10 a.m. at the Bethel Cemetery in Cordele, Georgia, with the minister selected officiating. Mr. William Lewis Kinchins, age 78, of 1907 Crisp Street, Cordele, Georgia, died Monday, September 7th at his residence. Survivors include his loving and devoted sisters, Mrs. Pansy Vines of Washington, D.C., Ms. Mary Kinchins, and Mrs. Estella Kinchins, both of Cordele, Georgia. A beloved brother, Mr. Floyd Kinchins of Washington, D.C., his aunts and uncles, Mrs. Alma Williams of Cordele, Georgia, Ms. Gloria Jackson, and Mr. Walter Jackson, both of Washington, D.C., a host of nieces and nephews, many cousins, other relatives, and many sorrowing friends survive. Mr. William Lewis Kinchins, age 78, of 1907 Crisp Street, Cordele, Georgia. The funeral service for Mr. William Lewis Kinchins will be announced at a later date, pending the completion of the arrangements. Mr. Stephen Darnell Lester, age 37, of 906 Avenue A, Knoxville, Tennessee, died Saturday, September 19th at his residence. Survivors include his loving and devoted wife, Ms. Kenyatta Maria Lester, his loving and devoted children, Ms. Omariani Smith, Ms. Soraya Anderson, Ms. Lanisha Lester, Ms. Lakiria Lester, and Mr. Jeremiah Lester. His loving mother, Ms. Sherry Collins Lester, his beloved father, Mr. Archie Lester Sr., and his wife, Mrs. Alice Lester, his siblings, Mr. Archie Lester Jr., Mr. Ronte Lester, Ms. Nikki Smith, Ms. Tamara Smith, and Mr. Davion Levan. His beloved grandmothers, Mrs. Annie Mae Collins, Minister Doris Reynolds, and Miss Clara Collier. His aunts and uncles, Mr. Willie Frank Collins Jr., Mr. Frank Collins, Mr. Greg Collins, Mr. Sarabian Collins, Mrs. Ira B. Brown and her husband, Mr. Tommy Lee Brown, Mr. Chris Collins, Mr. Jeronica Collins, Ms. Shane Collins, Ms. Dorothy Jean Collins, Mr. Michael Brown, Mr. Ronnie Walker and his wife, Mrs. Barbara Walker, Mr. Johnny Frank Lester, Reverend Nikita Lester and his wife, Ms. May Lester, and Mr. David Lester and his wife, Ms. Renee Lester. A host of nieces and nephews, many cousins, other relatives, and many sorrowing friends survive. Mr. Stephen Darnell Lester, age 37, of 906 Avenue A, Knoxville, Nashville, Tennessee. The funeral service for Mr. Stephen Darnell Lester will be announced at a later date, pending the completion of the arrangements. Ms. Patricia Ann Streeter, age 46, of 203 Jackson Street, Plains, Georgia, died Thursday, September 24th at the Southern Regional Medical Center in Riverdale, Georgia. Survivors include her loving and devoted children, Miss Jacavia Brown and Mr. Jaquan Walker, both of Atlanta, Georgia. Her loving and caring mother, Mrs. Beverly Streeter Redding of Plains, Georgia. Her caring siblings, Mr. Kelvin Streeter of Americus, Georgia, Mr. Leonard Anderson of Dublin, Georgia, Mr. Ronte Angry of Albany, Georgia, Mr. Keel Angry of Thomasville, Georgia, Miss Micaiah Jones of Smithville, Georgia, Miss Patrice Heron of Atlanta, Georgia, Mr. Bertram Harvey of New Jersey, Mr. Mark Bridges of Atlanta, Georgia, Miss Bianca Bridges of Plains, Georgia, Miss LaKenya Bridges, Miss Savius Bridges, and Miss Arian Bridges Brown of Americus, Georgia, Miss Quantia Hollis of Atlanta, Georgia, Mr. Demetrius Redding of Columbus, Georgia, Ms. Robin Thompson, and Mr. LaQuinton Redding, both of Buena Vista, Georgia. A host of nieces and nephews, many cousins, other relatives, and many sorry friends survived Miss Patricia Ann Streeter, age 46, of 203 Jackson Street, Plains, Georgia. The funeral service for Miss Patricia Ann Streeter will be announced at a later date, pending the completion of the arrangements. Mr. Curtavious Lashard Butts, age 25, of 507 West Peachtree Avenue, Cordele, Georgia, died Friday, September 25th of injuries sustained in an automobile accident. Survivors include his precious and adored children, Miss Kansas Butts and little Kalia Lauren Butts, both of Cordele, Georgia. His beloved stepson, Master Zion J. Oliver of Cordele, Georgia. His loving mother, Mrs. Tanya Hudson Apia, and her husband, Mr. Raymond Apia of Cordele, Georgia. His beloved father, Mr. Curtis Butts of Cordele, Georgia. His caring brothers and sisters, Mrs. Tiffany Johnson and her husband, Mr. Marlon Johnson, Mr. Keon Butts, Miss LaPortia Brown and her husband, Mr. Jaquise Brown, and Mr. Anquavius Butts, all of Cordele, Georgia. And Mr. Ernest Hudson of Atlanta, Georgia. His beloved and caring grandparents, Mr. Arnett and Mrs. Dolores Rawls, Mr. Will and Mrs. Margaret Hudson, and Mrs. Charlie Mae Butts, all of Cordele, Georgia. A host of aunts and uncles, many cousins, other relatives, and many sorry friends survived Mr. Curtavious Lashard Butts, age 25, of 507 West Peachtree Avenue, Cordele, Georgia. The funeral service for Mr. Curtavious Lashard Butts will be announced at a later date, pending the completion of the arrangements. Ms. Winetta Alexis Hawkins, age 24, of Cordele, Georgia, died Friday, September 25th of injuries sustained in an automobile accident. Survivors include her precious and adored children, Master Zion J. Oliver, Miss Kansas Butts, and little Kalia L. Butts, all of Cordele, Georgia. Her loving and devoted parents, Deacon William Hawkins and Ms. Carlin Fitzpatrick Hawkins of Vienna, Georgia. Her loving and devoted sisters, Miss Linquinetta Bush of Cordele, Georgia, Miss Shashina Solomon, her husband, Mr. Sean Solomon of Unadilla, Georgia, Miss Yushara Hawkins and Miss Skylar Hawkins, both of Vienna, Georgia. Her beloved grandparents, Miss Azaline Kellogg and her husband, Mr. Malcolm Kellogg of Cordele, Georgia, and Mother Melan Holt Hawkins of Americus, Georgia. Her beloved aunts and uncles, Mr. Charles Fitzpatrick and his wife, Miss Lakeisha Fitzpatrick of Cordele, Georgia, Miss Renee Lester and her husband, Mr. David Lester of El Paso, Texas, Deacon Johnny Hawkins Jr. and his wife, Mrs. Nancy Hawkins, Mr. Buster Hawkins, Mrs. Lizzie H. Spencer and her husband, Mr. Willie Spencer, and Mr. Solomon Holtz and his wife, Mrs. Jeanette Holtz, all of Americus, Georgia. Mr. Robert C. Hawkins and his wife, Mrs. Jacqueline Hawkins, Miss Frankie M. Hawkins, Mr. Willie L. Hawkins, and Mrs. Annie Griffin and her husband, Mr. Mickey Griffin, all of Americus, Georgia. Mr. Leon Hawkins of Unadilla, Georgia, and Mr. Isaiah Hawkins and his wife, Ms. Tripp Hawkins of Vienna, Georgia. A host of cousins, other relatives, and many, many sorry friends survive. Ms. Renetta Alexis Hawkins, age 24, of Cordele, Georgia. The funeral service for Ms. Renetta Alexis Hawkins will be announced at a later date, pending the completion of the arrangements. Mother Martha Harris, age 99, of 426 Leonard Street, died late last evening, Saturday, September 26, at her residence. The funeral service for Mother Martha Harris, age 99, will be announced at a later date, pending the completion of the arrangements. The J.W. Williams Funeral Directors serving Cordele and Vienna are in charge of each of these arrangements during this week. Friends, that concludes our funeral announcements for today. As always, at this time, we would like to remind you concerning advanced funeral planning that's available at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home. If you have questions or concerns, we ask that you will stop by and speak with our licensed insurance agents. If you will give us a call, we'll be so happy to make plans with you to discuss any of those questions that you might have. We'd also like to remind you that whole life insurance is available at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home. And now this morning, as we continue with our announcements, we would like to remind you that you're always invited to worship at the New Poplar Spring Baptist Church. Sunday morning worship service begins at 9:45 a.m. and Wednesday evening service at 6:45 p.m. via conference call. And you're invited to dial 253-993-3761. And by way of a very special announcement, the New Poplar Spring Baptist Church invites you to join them on Sunday, October the 11th at 9:45 a.m. again via conference call as they celebrate the 19th Pastoral Appreciation for Pastor Johnny Dean. Dr. Alicia R. Ritchie of Indigo Life Communications Incorporated will be the speaker. At 12:30 p.m., they will have a drive-by celebration to honor Pastor Dean with gifts and words of appreciation. This is coming up on Sunday, October 11th at 9:45 a.m. Pastor Johnny Dean, pastor. The Greater Mars Tabernacle Baptist Church conference call schedule is as follows. Sunday morning worship service at 10 a.m. Tuesday midday prayer conference at 12 o'clock noon. Thursday prayer meeting and Bible study at 6 o'clock p.m. The call-in number for the conference call is 229-329-7611. 229-329-7611. Mother Lucille Shays is the church mother. Deacon Arthur L. Park is the chairman of deacons. Reverend Dr. K.M. Williams is the pastor. The family of the late Deacon R.C. Henderson Sr. would like to extend a sincere thank you to everyone for the expressions of kindness shown to them during the passing of Deacon R.C. Henderson. May God bless and keep each of you as their prayer, Mrs. Mary Ruth Henderson and family. As we continue this morning with our dedications, Our first selection this morning is dedicated in loving memory of Mr. Claude Harris, who departed this life September 24th, 1996. Dedication requested by the family. In loving memory of Ms. Cynthia Calloway Horn, who would have celebrated her birthday September 25th. Dedication requested by the family. In loving memory of Mother Eva Mae Durham, who would have celebrated her birthday on September 25th. Dedication requested by her children, Mrs. Robin Booker, Mr. Walter Durham, Deacon William O. Durham, Mrs. Laura Ann Durham, Mrs. Valerie Durham, and Miss Sandra Durham. In loving memory of Mrs. Maddie Florine Mumphrey, who departed this life September 28th, 2012. Dedication requested by the Mumphrey, Manning, Hughes, and Dahlberry families. In loving memory of Mr. Jerry L. Grant, who would have celebrated his birthday September 29th. Dedication requested by his wife, children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and the entire Grants and Fagan family. In loving memory of Mr. Tommy Lee Kendrick Sr., who departed this life September 29th, 1984. Also in loving memory of Mrs. Jacqueline Kendrick, who departed her life October 4th, 2006. Dedication requested by their children, Mr. Tommy Kendrick Jr., Mrs. Gail Passmore, Mr. Philip Kendrick, Mrs. Opal Woodson, and Mr. Willie Kendrick, their grandchildren and great-grandchildren. In loving memory of Mrs. Olaby Quinn, who would have celebrated her birthday on September 30th. Dedication requested by Mrs. Mary Frances Davis and Deacon Eric Quinn. In loving memory of Mrs. Pauline Mayweather, who departed this life September 30th, 2001. Dedication requested by her sister, Mrs. Carrie Brooks, and family. In loving memory of Mrs. Honeybee Vance, who departed this life September 30th, 1976. Dedication requested by the entire family. In loving memory of my uncle, Mr. John D. Rogers, who departed this life September 24th, and also in loving memory of my aunt, Mrs. Gussie Mae Telfair Rogers, who departed this life September 22nd, 1999. Dedication requested by their children, Henry, Wilhelmina, John, George, Alberta, Bobby, and Rose, their grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and the entire family. In loving memory of Commissioner H.H. Demery, who departed this life September 30th, 2012. Dedication requested by his wife, Ms. Gabriella Demery. In loving memory of Mrs. Ora D. Clark Williams, who would have celebrated her birthday October the 2nd. Dedication requested by her children, Sammy and Deborah Clark. I'd like to take this opportunity to wish a very special 39th wedding anniversary to Mr. Willie King and Mrs. Lindell Westbrook, who will celebrate the anniversary on Monday, September 28th. Dedication requested by their children, Pamela and Derek Ray, Tamara, Waltavius, and Sharita Westbrook, their mother, Mrs. Martha Ruth Westbrook, and Miss Sarah Roundtree, and the entire Westbrook and Roundtree family. God bless your union and keep it strong. Would also like to take this opportunity to wish a very special happy 15th wedding anniversary to Deacon Michael and Mrs. Patricia Williams, who will celebrate their anniversary on Wednesday, September 30th. Dedication requested by the entire family. We'd like to take this opportunity to say happy birthday to Miss Roland Redding. Happy birthday to Miss Latasha Smith. Happy birthday to little Christiana Jones. Happy birthday to Miss Linda Jean Carter. Happy birthday to missionary Irene Cantrell. Also, we say happy birthday to Miss Shanice McGill, who will celebrate her birthday on Monday, September 28th. We wish a very special happy birthday to Mrs. Calandra Wilkerson Parker, who celebrated her birthday on yesterday. And also, we wish a very special happy birthday to Miss Armani Owens, my daughter, who is celebrating her birthday today. We pray that each of you will have a very wonderful day. As we continue now, we like to do our campaign dedications. This selection is dedicated to Colonel Eric D. Bryant, candidate for Sumter County Sheriff, Mr. Kenneth Hamilton, candidate for Sumter County Commissioner, District 5, Mrs. Twani Buffy Edwards, candidate for Sumter County Tax Commissioner, Dr. Brooks Robinson, who is a candidate for the Sumter County Board of Education, Dr. Elizabeth Maddox, who is the incumbent, and she's running for the position of Chris County Board of Education, and also for Reverend Isaac Owens, who's a candidate for the Chris County Chief Magistrate Judge, and Mr. Tim Robinson, who is a candidate for the Dooley County Commissioner District 4. It is certainly with the deepest regret that we make the following announcements. Mrs. Catherine Johnson Cross, age 76, of 1027 Westside Drive, Americus, Georgia, died Saturday, September 19th at her residence. The graveside funeral service for Mrs. Catherine Johnson Cross will be held today, Sunday, September 27th at 12 o'clock noon at the Eastview Cemetery in Americus, Georgia. Her pastor, Reverend Jermaine Harris, pastor of the Allen Chapel AME Church, will officiate. Mr. Otis Hardy, age 65, of 509 North Jackson Street, Albany, Georgia, died Sunday, September 20th at his residence. The graveside funeral service for Mr. Otis Hardy will be held today, Sunday, September 27th at 4 o'clock p.m. at the Vienna City Cemetery in Vienna, Georgia. Brother James Wise of the Kingdom Hall of Jehovah's Witnesses will officiate. Mr. Ulysses Fullwood Jr., age 64, of 111 Rebecca Court, Cordele, Georgia, died Monday, September 21st at the Crisp Regional Hospital in Cordele, Georgia. The graveside funeral service for Mr. Ulysses Fullwood Jr. will be held Monday, September 28th at 11 o'clock a.m. at the Westview Cemetery in Cordele, Georgia. The walk-up public visitation will be held today from 1 until 5 o'clock p.m. at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home. United States Army veteran Mr. Charlie Smith Sr., age 73, of 712 West 22nd Avenue, Cordele, Georgia, died Tuesday, September 1st at Regency Hospital in Macon, Georgia. The funeral service for United States Army veteran Mr. Charlie Smith Sr. will be held Thursday, October 8th, at 10 o'clock a.m. at the Bethel Cemetery in Cordele, Georgia, with the minister selected officiating. Mr. William Lewis Kinchins, age 78, of 1907 Crisp Street, Cordele, Georgia, died Monday, September 7th at his residence. The funeral service for Mr. William Lewis Kinchins will be announced at a later date, pending the completion of the arrangements. Mr. Stephen Darnell Lester, age 37, of 906 Avenue A, Nashville, Tennessee, died Saturday, September 19th at his residence. The funeral service for Mr. Stephen Darnell Lester will be announced at a later date, pending the completion of the arrangements. Ms. Patricia Ann Streeter, age 46, of 203 Jackson Street, Plains, Georgia, died Thursday, September 24th at the Southern Regional Medical Center in Riverdale, Georgia. The funeral service for Ms. Patricia Ann Streeter will be announced at a later date, pending the completion of the arrangements. Mr. Curtavious Lashard Butts, age 25, of 507 West Peachtree Avenue, Cordele, Georgia, died Friday, September 25th of injuries sustained in an automobile accident. The funeral service for Mr. Curtavious Lashard Butts will be announced at a later date, pending the completion of the arrangements. Ms. Winetta Alexis Hawkins, age 24, of Cordele, Georgia, died Friday, September 25th of injuries sustained in an automobile accident. The funeral services for Ms. Winetta Alexis Hawkins will be announced at a later date, pending the completion of the arrangements. Mother Martha Harris, age 99, of 426 Leonard Street, Vienna, Georgia, died late last evening, Saturday, September 26th, at her residence. The funeral service for Mother Martha Harris, age 99, will be announced at a later date, pending the completion of the arrangements. The J.W. Williams Funeral Directors of Cordele and Vienna will be in charge of these arrangements during this week. final selection this morning is dedicated to the bereaved families whose loved ones were laid to rest during the past week. The family of Deacon Robert Curtis Henderson Sr. of Cordele, Georgia, the family of Mr. Robert Lewis McCormick of Cordele, Georgia, the family of Mother Mary Louise Williams of Cordele, Georgia, the family of Mother Lula Mae Williams Smith Felton of Cordele, Georgia, the family of Mr. Roderick Terrell Roberts of Cordele, Georgia, the family of Missionary Carolyn Burnett Lofton of Cordele, Georgia, the family of little Gianna Denise Harris of Fort Valley, Georgia. This selection is dedicated to the bereaved families whose loved ones will be laid to rest during this week. The family of Mrs. Catherine Johnson Cross of Americus, Georgia, the family of Mr. Otis Hardy of Albany, Georgia, the family of Mr. Ulysses Fullwood Jr. of Cordele, Georgia, the family of United States Army veteran Mr. Charlie Smith Sr. of Cordele, Georgia, the family of Mr. William Lewis Kinchens of Cordele, Georgia, the family of Mr. Stephen Darnell Lester of Knoxville, Tennessee, the family of Ms. Patricia Ann Streeter of Plains, Georgia, the family of Mr. Curtavius Lashard Butts of Cordele, Georgia, the family of Ms. Winetta Alexis Hawkins of Cordele, Georgia, the family of Mother Martha Harris of Vienna, Georgia. This selection is dedicated to all of our sick and shut-ins, to all of our patients in the local and surrounding hospitals, nursing homes, rehabilitation centers, to our ministers and their spouses and family, to our retired educators, to the men and women serving in the armed forces, both stateside and abroad, and to all veterans, and to everyone who listens to our program each and every Sunday morning. It is a pleasure for us to bring this program to you. Our program in its entirety is dedicated in loving memory of our past president, Dr. Napoleon Williams. We dedicate our program this morning to our president, CEO, Deacon Arthur L. Parker, and his wife, Mrs. Calandra Wilkerson Parker. And again, we wish for her a very special happy birthday. We pray that God's blessings will continue to flow in her life as she celebrates another birthday. And as we remember her birthday, we also dedicate the selection this morning to each of you who have tuned in this morning. We thank you so much for tuning in. We remind you also, if you have announcements or dedications that you would like for us to share, so please get them to us before 12 o'clock noon on each Saturday of the week. We'd also like to remind you that if you have not taken the opportunity to register to vote, we encourage you to get registered. And for those of you who are not sure if you are a registered voter, take the time to check the Secretary of State's website to make sure that you are a registered voter. If you have not registered, please do so. And once you have registered, please take the opportunity to exercise your right to vote. We encourage you to do that. Also, we remind you to, as we continue throughout this pandemic time, to continue practicing safe precautions by wearing your mask and also practicing social distancing whenever you're in crowds. Let us do everything that we can to curtail this pandemic, that we might be able to resume a more comfortable way of living. We encourage each of you to take advantage of that and to do that as well. Again, we encourage you and thank each of you for tuning in this Sunday morning. We pray God's blessings upon you as you go throughout this week, and we pray safety to each of you as you continue on. Until next Sunday morning, God bless. Our final selection this morning.
this morning. We hope you've enjoyed our program. Tune in again on next Sunday morning. In your time of need, contact the competent, capable, and dependable staff at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home.
Some of these days, well, I'm going to walk up and take up my stand.
Greetings, my name is Eric Bryant, candidate for sheriff of Sumter County. I'm asking for your support and commitment on electing me as your next sheriff. A vote for me is a vote for service and protection. I'm committed and dedicated to our community. So on November 3rd, elect me, Eric Bryant, sheriff of Sumter County.
Good character, sound judgment, maturity, social awareness, and a commitment to serve all people are characteristics that your chief magistrate must possess. As a candidate for Chris County Chief Magistrate, I offer these characteristics to you, and I ask for your vote and your support. We're living in a crucial time. Many things have changed, but my commitment to serve the citizens of Chris County has never wavered. Whether you vote by mail-in ballot, early vote, or go to the polls on Tuesday, November 3rd, I'm Isaac Owens, and I ask for your vote and your support.
Recovery from mental and substance use disorders is real. You can